Welcome back. Let's take a look at a recent match that was played between Hololive English Justice and Hololive English Advent, both of whom are performance artists. They've traveled the world together and separately. They've frequently have audiences of tens of thousands, and today they gathered together to play a chess match. And we'll take a look and see just how good their performance was. So, with a bit of coaching, both sides had agreed upon this opening, explicitly or otherwise. One thing that's tricky about chess, it's like you have to prepare for a variety of things your opponent could spring on you. And maybe it's twice as challenging for black. I don't know. But yeah, here, this was what both sides had settled upon what they wanted to do. They had a brief practice match, and in the actual game, things went the same way. White is doing very well, bringing out both of their knights, which allows them to control the center, and will next allow them to develop their bishops, and then their queen and rooks, and if they focus on the center, they'll be able to affect the rest of the board. This knight h6 did draw some criticism during the real game, or during the game from spectators. I will link you to the video so you could watch more of the live commentary. But for here, I'll just say, like, this knight move is a bit tricky. There is a chess master on Lichess who actually likes to play this kind of move. And then you can shuffle the knight back in, and it affects the center in a way that the opponent's really not prepared to handle. And it can also be sneaky. You can move the knight up the board and start attacking the king's side. But white plays a principled game here, directly charging into the center. There is a saying, move the knights before the bishops. Bishops have a longer range of action, so it can be useful to delay the bishop move until you know exactly where you want to put it. But this does allow black to castle, so it's actually a good move. Yeah, here white puts the bishop on a square. In theory, black could, like, bring these pawns out to attack it. So it's a bit vulnerable here. There might be other squares you might want to put it. I don't know. But chess is confusing. A lot of things are possible. And yeah, if you're not like an extremely experienced player, you might just want to focus on moving all of your pieces once and then castling. That way you don't end up in trouble in the opening. Here black does bring their knight out, which is also a good move. I'm impressed, honestly. Like, if you had to ask me if a group of musicians, like, are how experienced would the entire group be at chess, I would not expect your average musicians to come up with this sequence of moves. White's bringing out all their pieces in a way that don't crash into each other, that harmonize, attacking all the squares. Black, although this knight here is a bit unconventional, black's also attacking the center. Sure, there's going to be some complications in a second, but, like, black is not randomly shuffling their pieces. They did castle. It's actually quite impressive how both sides are playing. At some point, I'd like to make better tooling that helps assess intrinsic performance rating. I know there is active research in the field. I know there's prior research. I still think there are better ways to visualize it, so you can really get a sense that both sides have some understanding, and quite a good understanding of what they're doing. Here, white plays an excellent move, setting a trap, believe it or not. It's hard to believe. But more importantly, like, typically in this opening, Black is aiming to get this thrust to d7, d5 in. That way they can contest all the light squares in the center of the board. So this is less typical. This is quite forcing. I don't know. White could just leave their pawn here and defend it again, or they could come up with something else to attack. But white just soldiers on, and now black can't advance the square. It can't advance the pawn to d5, so they in turn can't directly strike at this. Sure, maybe eventually this could be played. This does get tricky. I don't know. I would have to look carefully at it, to be honest. Black, I guess, doesn't want to retreat, because retreating can be seen as kind of weakness, I guess. Note that if the knight jumps forward, a pawn can kick it and it has to go back again. So this isn't too much different. Like, the knight would end up on the side either way. But from here, this knight has nowhere to go. You eventually will need to either get control of the c4 square, so you can play the knight to c4 later, or you'll need to be able to retreat the knight this way. Or, against all odds, you'll need to remove white's most important pawn, and white's not going to cooperate with you on that, so white's not going to move this or get it removed without some kind of compensation. So this is a bit risky. Safer would actually be retreating it. Yeah, it would be admitting some weakness, but sometimes you just have to roll with the punches, I guess. White also sees that retreating doesn't look so nice. Personally, I might have... let me remove these arrows. Says white, I might have retreated back here to e2. That way my bishop can be prepared to come out on some other diagonal, or be prepared to attack on the side where the king is at. Unfortunately, with the bishop up here, it's indirect. There are some tactics, like if black plays d6 and then c4, you might get your bishop trapped. So it's a bit tricky. If you see pawn d6, you might then immediately think to retreat the bishop. Say you've traveled many miles to play a tournament game, and then move like 10 something in the opening, one of your pieces is trapped, and the remainder of the next 2 hours you spend trying to either recover your piece or make other threats to make up for the fact that you lost a piece early in the game. Then you go home sad that you didn't win the game, didn't win the event. Then you go to your next tournament and the same things happen. So you're like, maybe next time I'm going to be more careful. So after you do that a few times, you might see traps like this earlier in the game. Alright, here, black activates their bishop. It's a beautiful looking move. It's threatening toward the king. If this knight is derelict of duty, you might be able to bring your queen and or knight up to attack the square further. What could go wrong, right? So, like, a typical player here might think, oh gosh, my king's attacked. I might want to move this pawn away. I might want to move something up so they can't hit my pawn anymore. I might want to block this bishop, just push my pawn up here. These are all things you typically expect somebody to do. This is funny. This is comedy right here. We're not going to respond to what the opponent's doing. We're going to go do our own thing. It's a really spirited move. It's beautiful, isn't it? I don't know that... Well, I mean, I could have come up with this move if I gave it enough time. It isn't on the top of my candidate move list, but that's just because I've kind of lost my creative spark. It's for moves like this that I think the game is worth showing. So, yeah, this just reminds me of other entertainer events and other players that haven't been doing the grind every day, every week, whatever. They are capable of coming up with these surprising moves that sometimes can be way more effective than you expect them to be. So, sure, it might be natural to retreat the bishop and block this attack. Maybe you push your kingside pawn, but that gets scary because white takes the knight. But no, if the black is choosing to counterattack, and let's just digress here for a brief second. If black looks at this, I could understand being afraid of a couple things. One, you might be afraid that this, not this, might be afraid that white pushes a pawn and suddenly your bishop looks like it's trapped. This could be tricky to reason about. But that's not the only thing here to be worried about. White could also withdraw the bishop, and now they're threatening this fork here. And there's just a lot of tactics to worry about. Your knight's on this edge, it's almost trapped. Your bishop behind the queen is kind of blocked in. There's just a lot of things to potentially worry about here. So you might not want to have so many things to worry about. So, yeah, instead, black avoids this. I was half expecting them to move up the queen 2 over here to b6, but I think the same sorts of tactics with these pawns rolling up just looks really scary. So, black instead decides to bring their queen over toward the side of the board where the kings are at, which actually is pretty scary, because now we're looking at, like, queen coming out, joining the bishop. Sure, this is defended, but, you know, anything can happen. White immediately strikes at this bishop, taking the center by storm. Black retreats. White advances once more. I've had this kind of vice grip in one of my own games. I was on the receiving end of it, and I can tell you this kind of thing can be effective. It really shuts down the opponent's pieces. The downside of pushing this too far is that this knight can escape back to c6 and start pressuring the center again. But it is worth noting that if black is a bit careless here, like if they just drop the bishop back, this threatens the rook, and you're getting a quality improvement, as a rook can typically move to more squares than the bishop can, so it's worth more. So black's had enough of this. They say, okay, you're taking my bishop, I'm taking your bishop. And again, I'll direct you to the video to see, you could hear the live comments from the players, each in their own team room, trying to reason about what's happening here. White's response was, okay, well, if you're taking my bishop, I'm going to take your knight first, and then I'm going to take your bishop. And white gained a piece. White did the first capture and the last capture, so they're doing awesome here. Black chooses to counterattack right away, which, again, good move. White starts attacking the queen, and attacking the queen again. We'll remind you that if the queen and the knight dance back and forth, that's repetition, and a repetition that if you repeat the same position 3 times, that can be a draw. So, curiously, black was not amenable to that, or just thought that white might come up with a better move. So, black continues attacking. They're not going to repeat. White continues activating their pieces. Black brings their rook. They fought to safety. Actually, this makes other threats too. This is threatening to try to pin this pawn so that black can take the knight. It's a bit tricky, but another thing that could join the attack. Black might later get their bishop out to also pile onto this attack. So even though they've given up some material, and material can be quite important, yeah, things can get pretty scary for white in a hurry unless they move with urgency. As white here, I kind of like the idea of retreating the bishop. And, you know, I don't see exactly how these rooks can join the attack over... Oh, now I see an idea. During the game I didn't see this, but perhaps if you play a4, rook a3, and you get the knights out of the way, you could play rook g3. That's one way you could consider this. During the game, I was looking more moves like rook e1, rook e4, rook g4, except the rook's hanging here on g4. But something like this. And maybe if you take the pawn on f6, you could start moving the knights in. There might be some combination here. But, you know, why take two birds in the bush when you could take the bird in the hand? White sees a pawn, they take the pawn. You know, it's a good pragmatic decision if you're still trying. I don't know. In chess, there is some need for pragmatic decisions, but if you make too many slack moves, bad things will eventually happen. A bad move can invite more bad moves, as they say. So again, here black can pile up with bishop b7, which targets this, and they can join the attack with the rook, which also targets this. Things can get quite messy for white in a hurry here, despite being up a piece. Black was in time pressure, so they came up with this move. Unfortunately, it doesn't directly threaten anything. Maybe it does defend against bishop d3 or something, I'm not sure. So white seizes the initiative. And this is one of the problems with like making a quick move here. So if you're shuffling a bit, like white shuffled a move, black shuffled a move, and now white sees something. If black had instead attacked, white would be responding to the attack. Black would attack again, and, you know, it helps to take the initiative to seize the day. Black, again in time pressure, shuffles a bit. I'd like to see formats which allow for longer games. I know when you have so many talented staff producing an event and so many talented participants, allocating a big block of time might not be real or feasible, but it's unfortunate to see a good game. Anyway, let's move on. So, white played this excellent move. It is a sacrifice. Black plays, in my mind, the most reasonable reply. I forget. Is rook takes... Is that viable? This knight is hanging. Black plays the trickiest reply here. I think had black responded with this capture, I think white would have figured out it's reasonable to take the knight. And now it's still difficult to get this bishop out of c8. There's... Even if some engine tells you that moving the rook here to d7 might be the safest move, if you're lost, finding the safest move is not necessarily going to save you if you're already lost. So here white was having some discussion, and again was feeling the time pressure, and so they played this random shuffling move. There was actually a really creative sacrifice that they were trying to figure out. It was a bit tricky. So if white takes this bishop, the bishop's no longer defending the promotion square. So then there can be this promotion. And so you have a queen defending this, and the queen is forking the king and the rook here too. So once you lose the queen, like rook takes queen, you can do queen takes rook, and then you can take the other rook as well with an overwhelming attack. But time pressure contributed to the situation. So white made the shuffling move. Black made this excellent response here. I did not see this move coming. So I was all ready to chalk this up as a win for white. And then we saw this. And suddenly this combination that we were looking at a second ago, it's not there anymore. Yeah, you can still take the knight, fine. But this promotion is now defended by both the rook and the queen. So there's nothing to do there. This rook takes d7, this exchange of a rook for a bishop. Well, I guess you get the piece back. You haven't lost, but it's not winning like it used to be. White finds a good move. They said they were protecting their queen. I don't know. Like, if something attacks the queen, are you just gonna say, "Well, I protected it"? Maybe. It's a way of thought. I guess if the queen attacks the queen, I guess that's fine. But also, notably, this does attack Black's knight. And Black's knight doesn't have many squares it can go to. Note, now the sacrifice of rook takes bishop no longer is supported because after this exchange, this pawn c8 is not supported by the queen anymore because there's a knight in the way. So pawn c8 no longer wins, so this pawn is stuck now. So the sacrifice has to be delayed. You could push the pawn again, the knight could go back, and maybe you find the sacrifice the second time around, but maybe black actually brings their knight up. And, well, I don't know. Tactics can happen. Crazy things can happen in time pressure. Fans love seeing chaos in time pressure, but fans don't like seeing their champions lose in time pressure either. Black, again, plays this excellent defensive resource here, which prevents the pawn from promoting once more. White brings their knight to the center, where it's extremely effective. So here, I would have loved to see this. And I would have hoped that, I don't know, to see some counterattack. Like, you could do something fun here. Like, after you move this rook over, you could bring the king to the corner, bring the other rook over, and then suddenly, like, you're piling up, and, like, what's white gonna do? This knight, if it takes the pawn, you take the knight. Where else is the knight gonna go? Where's this knight gonna go? It's blocked by all these other things. This, I guess, there's a problem here. So you still need, there's still some problems to solve, but I don't know. Maybe this isn't the right turn to do this. But it would have been fun to see something like that, or tucking the king in the corner, bringing this rook over. There's a lot of ways this could have played out. Again, in severe time pressure, black sees a pawn, they take a pawn. White takes back, and oh no. Uh-oh. Everything is attacked. That's kind of difficult to reason about, especially in time pressure. So, yeah. Anything can happen here. It's the Wild West. White is attacking this pawn. So, now that the bishop has been removed, black kind of needs... Well, even if they do this, white can play this tricky move, which hits two pieces at once. Well, can they? Hang on. Chess is tricky, isn't it? So now the rook defends the queen. So if white takes the rook, the queen drops. If white exchanges queens, it is a fair trade. But white's got one fewer pawn and not quite as many threats as they used to have. Anything can happen in time pressure. So Instead, black takes here, and things quickly wrap up after white promotes. There's not really much room for black to defend here. If you're losing the rook, you might as well get something for it. This might have been a safer way about it, but you're down multiple pieces here either way. And chaos happened, and yeah, here black stopped moving, either because this position looked hopeless, or they thought it was checkmate, or like black can block with the queen, but white takes the queen if they see that, and that would be checkmate. So, chess is hard, isn't it? But I'm impressed. It's like if you compare this to an event that chess.com ran, some games and that event would end far before 30 moves. Some would go longer than 30 moves. Your typical chess game, between equally paired players, can go about 30 to 40 moves. So this is a pretty fair match. That's quite impressive. I liked that white attacked the center directly. I like that black was doing all these counterattacking things and trying to make all kinds of subtle threats. It would have been perhaps easier for black to make more threats if they could get this bishop off the back row. White got both knights and both bishops off the back row. Wait, when did they get their queen out? It was at this moment here. I'm impressed. Yes, so if you connect the rooks, this is something from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley. He published a teaching material, a CD software in the 90s. Maurice Ashley teaches chess. And in that, he would suggest connect your rooks. So to connect the rooks on the back rank, you have to move out the knights, you have to castle, you have to move out the bishops and the queen. And once the rooks are connected, they can storm the center and invade the opponent's position. So here, I don't know that you had to go all the way up here, but it's actually like this prevents black from moving their center pawn. And if the bishop goes off to the side, this pawn is dropping. So this put a ton of pressure on black here. And like, what better way? Yeah, there were some just really impressive moves that I don't think, if we had looked at the chess.com event, I don't think we would have seen moves this impressive in that. So, yeah, this here, black was feeling the heat. Yeah, these pawns made it all the way up the board. If the bishop moved forward, maybe the knight gets trapped. Who knows? It's quite unfortunate this gave away a piece. Although it's not the end of the story. Like, black counterattacked even from here. But yeah, if your pieces could make it off the right, bottom, and left edges of the board, they'd have better chances to attack most of the opponent's pieces. Oh, yeah, by the way, there is a saying, never interrupt an opponent while they're making a mistake. So if you think that knights on the edge of the board are not the greatest thing, maybe don't kick the knight. Maybe like make some other move that subtly just leaves the knight there, and you'll find a chance to pounce on it later. Maybe you think you were winning the pawn, but here white defended it. So I guess this continues to make a threat on the pawn. Oh, is this why white moved the queen up, actually? To defend this pawn? Maybe that's what this is actually about. Interesting. I would not normally expect players to find a move like this, but when your opponent is making threats, this is the window where you feel the most motivated to look for something you wouldn't otherwise look for. So white really capitalized on that. And then here white plays a slack move, and unfortunately, like finding all these resources for black is pretty tough. It's doable, especially if you're feeling the heat of your opponent's attack. But in this time pressure of this event, mistakes are made by both sides. And sure, you could like double the length of the event, you could triple the length of the event, you could do all these things to improve the quality of the moves. But then that ends a different kind of pressure about, well, gosh, we allocated 5 hours for a game, and on move five, somebody made a mistake and it's over. What do we do now? You don't want that dynamic either. Organizers, I don't know. It's tough. How do you make sure that there's enough time for the players to think, but not so much time that the players feel the different kind of pressure? Another solution would be to do some kind of longer event. It's hard. I sympathize. Yeah, I've played many tournaments before. I've been eliminated from tournaments early for having made some pretty bad mistakes. And it's some experience that you learn from and you improve from, and you can do better in the next event. So what else could be said? But yeah, other formats could maybe accommodate more things. It would be interesting to see other strategy games taken on. I know that there are a variety of strategy games that are played not just on the Switch platform, where there's that strategy game online bundle that Hololive JP tends to play a lot. But it'd be interesting to see things with Shogi, with Go. I don't know, what other games would we like to see? It could be fun to see Riichi Mahjong. I don't know if and when that could happen, but yeah, this it's a fun event to watch. I'm really impressed that both sides played a lot of tactics, and that only one piece got hung this game. It was just here, this combination that like I could understand, and even after that was hung, like Black still was able to make lots of threats and make it an exciting game. So yeah, I'm impressed by the game overall. Uh, wouldn't expect a group of musicians to be quite so skilled at strategy games, and I look forward to being impressed in future events. So, thanks for playing, and we'll see you around.